lowest court for the District of Singapore is now in session.
Please be seated. Before we begin, I will ask the courtroom deputy to recite the oath to the jury.
Do you and each of you solemnly swear that the answers you shall give to the questions asked by the court, touching upon your qualifications to act as jurors in the cause now before the court, shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Jurors, you may be seated. This is a civil case brought by the common soldier charging the defendant Douglas Haig with the accusation of leading 57,000 soldiers to their death in the Somme, 1914. If the accused is found guilty, he will be sentenced to life in prison. Atkins Smith will be representing the prosecution side, while the defence counsel side will be represented by Beatrice Jones.
If you would please, Your Honour, the prosecution would like to read a short statement to the jury explaining why Haig deserves to be known as the Butcher of the Somme and be sentenced to life in prison.
Very well, please continue.
Your Honour, counsel and gentlemen of the jury, my name is Atkins Smith, and I'm representing the common soldiers in this case. During the Battle of the Somme, there were over 57,000 deaths in the first day alone. This was due to Douglas Haig's comments towards the soldiers in his army. Sir Douglas Haig had commanded his soldiers to walk over the top, knowing that they would be fully exposed to German machine guns. Sir Douglas Haig, what was your initial goal for making your soldiers walk over the top?
As a nation, we were all under the impression that the Germans would be annihilated by our attack. How were we to know that they sought cover and survived? I blame not my judgment of the situation, but the lack of firepower to kill the Germans. If we had not a shortage of firepower, we may very well have killed most of the Germans, which would have allowed us to proceed with the push.
Haig assisted Britain in winning the war, although he did it with a tremendous loss of lives. Haig wanted to win the war in the quickest means possible, and therefore would do anything for this to happen. During the Battle of the Somme, whilst Haig's men were starving in the cold and muddy trenches, Haig was sipping French wine in a cozy chateau miles away from the fighting. This now shows that he only cared for himself, not for the hard-fighting soldiers.
Victory requires sacrifices, and sacrifices can be heavy on both sides. It all comes down to the courage, moral, and equipment of the soldiers and their superiors. How was I to know that the Germans would withstand our merciless attacks? I was in fact ordered to carry out these attacks. I have fought for our country in the past, and am still fighting, but in different ways. Is it not fair to say I have earned these fruits of life?
Sir Douglas Haig had been using the same tactics over again, knowing that they were failing. Due to many men in his army constantly dying, and Haig did not even change his tactics slightly. Sir Douglas Haig, why did you not change any of your tactics when you knew they were consistently failing?
I believe in cavalry. I believe that the value of the horse and the opportunity for the horse in the future are likely to be as great as ever. Aeroplanes and tanks are only accessories to the men and the horse, and I feel sure that as time goes on, you will find just as much use for the horse, the well-bred horse, as you have ever done in the past. What is the point of fighting when you have no pride, no honour? One must fight with grace and fight like a man.
Your Honour, may I call witness to the stand?
Yes, you may. Sir Smith?
Thank you, Your Honour. Will the witness John Hughes please stand? During the Battle of the Somme, did you happen to see Sir Douglas Haig sitting in a chateau far away from the battlefield?
Yes, prosecutor. I was in battlefield and wanted to walk away from the gory men being left to die with bullets and scars being left on them. I turned around and saw our leader, the man who is supposed to be fighting for this country and guiding our men through the battlefield, sitting in a chateau with a glass of wine whilst his men were over the top, fighting and risking their lives for our country.
My witness is stating the absolute truth. This man was having a glass of wine whilst his men was fighting and risking their lives. May I ask Sir Douglas Haig, what exactly were you doing on this particular night?
Yes, I was in fact sipping a glass of wine in my chateau. I would like to repeat that I have already served our country and earned the right to enjoy the fruits of life. Why don't we talk about all the times I was there for my men, almost like fighting side by side with them? In my position, do you have any knowledge of the pressure you put on you and the expectation to perform? A little drink here and there to refresh is better than leaving my men into total annihilation in the battlefield. Your Honour, may I call a witness to the stand?
Yes, Sir Douglas Haig.
Could I please call my witness Sam Pockerham to stand? During the Battle of the Somme, would you agree that I was there for my men?
Yes, Sir Douglas Haig, I would agree. You were there for your men. Sir Douglas Haig has been supporting his men in coming up with the best plans to attack our enemies. They have not worked every time, but he has tried his absolute best. The men of his army should not be complaining about seeing him in a chateau with a glass of wine in his hand. Sir Douglas Haig deserved what he had.
Do note that Sir Douglas Haig didn't work with trained soldiers. Instead, worked with civilian soldiers who lack knowledge and skills in terms of fighting in an actual war. Casualties are inevitable, especially in this case. The Somme attack was not just about antiquated tactics, as the battle witnessed the use of the rolling artillery barrage that should have helped the Allied troops as they advanced. Haig succeeded in leading an army in the Battle of Mons and the First Battle of Ypres. Tanks were only introduced during these times through trial and error. Haig and his men were only getting used to the new technologies, which is an absurd thing to blame him for.
Your Honor, permission to speak?
Permission granted.
The defense said that Sir Douglas Haig only worked with civilians, and thus they were not trained properly. Although he was a trained field marshal, thus making him capable of training these soldiers, and also knowing not to put them in danger. Sir Douglas Haig should have also known that he should have stopped cavalry the second that he started to lose soldiers.
The war happened too sudden, and there were only limited amount of time to train these men. While Douglas Haig is remembered for the losses at the Somme and Passchendaele, it is often forgotten that from August 1918, Haig oversaw Britain's advance during what became known as the 100-Day Offensive, the Allies' great push, in partnership with the overall Allied commander, the French C-in-C, Ferdinand Foch. The offensive ultimately led to victory and the surrender of the Germans on 11th of November.
Sir Douglas Haig does not have an excuse for using the same method over again and killing those innocent men.
Haig was under pressure and needed the quickest possible defense to win the war. He was often under pressure of his French allies to act, bringing forward, for example, the Somme offensive by 6 weeks to help take the pressure off the French at the long slug that was the Battle of Verdun. The question remains, however, would the extra 6 weeks to prepare them made a difference? The answer is probably not.
Order in the court. Both sides have made their valid points. We will let the jury decide whether Douglas Haig shall be prosecuted or not. Jury.
We have analyzed that Sir Douglas Haig should be prosecuted for taking innocent men's lives. The court has come to an end and Sir Douglas Haig should be sentenced to life in prison. The court is adjourned.